Now, the whistleblower smack at the centre of these allegations that a UK-based company, Cambridge Analytica, improperly used the personal data of some 50 million Facebook users to help Donald Trump win the 2016 presidential election, is expressing regret for having taken part in the project altogether. Chris Wiley on Tuesday told a packed audience at the Frontline Club, it's a media organisation in London, that he was sorry that he had actually worked for CA.
I'm trying to accept responsibility. I'm not shying away from the fact that I played an incredibly fundamental role in setting up this company. I made mistakes. I'm regretful and I'm sorry for that. But the very first thing that I have to do is tell people about it, and then the next step for me is to figure out what I can do to make good.
We really need to do a data audit to find out whether this personal information was acquired by Cambridge Analytica, whether or not Facebook took appropriate measures when they found that there may have been a breach, how robust was their response. So we're looking at both sides of the equation here.
This is about the way in which Facebook manages user data, and lots of people who watching programs like this will be saying, well, I use Facebook every day, is my data safe? How can I be certain that my data is not going to end up in the hands of a company like Cambridge Analytica, where I never gave my consent for that to happen?
All right, then, quite a bit to get through on this story as it develops. Daniel Rangers is live in Washington, D.C. Richard Bestick is live in London. Gentlemen, thank you for your time. So, Daniel, let's start with you. Legislators and regulators in the U.S. demanding answers. When or will Mark Zuckerberg testify? Because he's been quiet as this entire thing has been developing.
We found out that Mark Zuckerberg is likely to make a rare public statement within the next 24 hours. I can't tell you exactly how that's going to be done, whether through the Facebook platform or through a more open media environment, we don't know. But in the meantime, we do have this statement saying Mark, Sheryl and their team, referring to Sheryl Sandberg, the COO, are working around the clock to get all the facts and take the appropriate action moving forward because they understand the seriousness of this issue, and the entire company, it says, is outraged. We were deceived. I think what goes to the heart of why lawmakers both here and in the United Kingdom are clamoring for Mark Zuckerberg to testify is that in the past they've had people come to tell them that the privacy settings were fine, everything is fine, they're doing work to combat fake news on their site, and yet we still have a breach that they discovered in 2015, and then they took the company's word for it that they deleted this 50 million users' data, but in fact the whistleblower revealed that this wasn't the case. Well, if this is one of the most sophisticated data mining companies in the world, Facebook, why were they allowed to be deceived? And the issue fundamentally is whether Facebook is willing to take responsibility for that. They are saying that they don't believe this is a data breach. Why are they saying that? Because then they would be legally liable.
Indeed. Richard, walk us through the scope of investigations, not just in the UK, but the EU as well. What are they probing in this affair?
Rama, the pressure here, this side of the Atlantic, is both political and legal. The UK's data watchdog, the Information Commission, is still seeking a warrant for a raid on Cambridge Analytica's London headquarters. The Commissioner, Elizabeth Denham, says her inquiries need legal muscle because the firm, in her view at least, has been, quote, uncooperative. Denham wants to know what the Cambridge-based political consulting firm intended with the harvesting of those millions of personal profile, and she's already talking about charges. On the political front, UK Prime Minister Theresa May has been dragged into it during Prime Minister's questions earlier, asked about political donations to her party from the parent company of Cambridge Analytica. She says that this is a problem it needs looking at. Meanwhile, the British Parliament's Digital Media Committee members say they want to go face to face with Mark Zuckerberg himself. They want him to come here and explain what's going on, and they're not in a particularly good mood either, accusing Facebook employees of misleading the committee in previous hearings. So from the UK, pressure on two fronts for Cambridge Analytica and, of course, Facebook.
Indeed. Daniel, let me come back to you. And for context for our viewers, right now I'm looking at Facebook's shares, 1.6% higher at this particular point. As things stand, though, people are spending a lot less time on Facebook. Aggregate hours falling by about 50 million a day. In markets like the US and Canada, accounts are in the decline. So given this latest decline, are funds cashing out of Facebook? Is the regulatory risk just becoming too much?
Well, if you'd have bought Facebook shares a few years ago, Rama, you would be doing pretty well. All of the tech stocks have done particularly well, and the latest scandal churning in the news cycle gives a lot of those traders an excuse to cash out at this point. Looking at the issue of, the amount of time people are spending, you and I probably are from a generation that used Facebook as one of the primary means of communicating with friends that you may have lost touch with for a while. But the younger generations are doing much more with apps like Instagram, WhatsApp, much more of that instant sense of communication. Those are companies owned by Facebook, by the way. So Facebook itself is still exposed to a younger generation. It has its own apps catering to those. But certainly I think as long as this story stays in the news cycle, there are going to be people thinking about whether they want to be engaged with Facebook and in a sense give away some of their privacy in return for some of the benefits of Facebook going forward. But certainly I think, the recovery in the share price today tells you that many people think that if Facebook does the right things in the next few weeks and months, they could overcome this and continue to be highly profitable.
Indeed. Richard, what sort of punishment can Facebook expect to face by the authorities in the UK and the EU? And especially given the fact that it does own WhatsApp and Instagram, do the ongoing probes they're looking at on data security, do they extend to those two as well?
The punishments could be quite extreme. If there is a class action against Facebook by 50 million people accusing it of holding of a breach of trust, that could add up to several trillion. There is also a European Union body which looks after the rights of users. They have powers of fining up to $12.5 million now for Facebook. That sum wouldn't be a problem. The inquiry this side of the Atlantic still is at the stage of, rather than looking at the financial consequences, rather trying to find out what is going on. The Parliamentary Digital Committee here, for example, wants to know whether those who gave details of themselves in these quizzes and questionnaires knew they'd be stored and potentially used for political purposes. And the second stage, it's alleged Cambridge Analytica accessed the details of friends of those who played the game. Now, if that's correct, that would then really move into the land of the legally questionable. Now, there will be financial consequences, but there could be more as well. At the moment, the Parliamentary Digital Committee is describing it all as a catastrophic failure of process. Ultimately, Rama, it could be a breach of privacy laws and a criminal matter, and really the consequences of that could be severe in financial terms, but they could go beyond financial terms as well.
Indeed. Gentlemen, thank you very much. Richard Besker there in London, and of course Daniel Rangers in Washington, DC, with a perspective from both sides of the Atlantic. And just in case you're interested, Facebook Class A shares up 1.3% as we speak.